There's no one perfect film that is going to tell us the answer to all our problems. We need lots of interpretations of that, which looks different from different communities and different cultures and different country contexts. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of storytelling. You can, invoke different worlds.
Jack and Lucy, you met through Climate Spring. Could you maybe tell us how, Jack, why did you feel the need to be accompanied in your project by Climate Spring? And also maybe Lucy, tell us how did you help Jack in his project?
Do you want to go first?
I mean, there's a real scarcity of this storytelling in general. There's not many people, certainly in the UK, who are doing this kind of thing. It still feels a bit taboo, actually, to be kind of talking about this stuff and saying some of this stuff out loud. And I have the privilege of pitching sometimes to big production companies, mid-sized production companies, of various capacities. And I always make a point when I'm in the room of saying, do you have anything on your slate that has an environmental theme, a climate theme, anything like this? And 9 times out of 10, they say no. And that's interesting. But it's also quite alienating, because it means that possibly they're not looking for that, it means they're not ready for that, they don't know how to have the conversation, and it doesn't fill me with confidence as a writer-director, because I need to work with producers who understand what I'm talking about and fundamentally get it and can back my stories with scrutiny and science and can talk about it just on a really base level, because this is a privilege to talk about this stuff. When you have the opportunity to tell a story about the world ending and this major issue of our time, you don't want to mess it up. So I think when I found Climate Spring and I found Lucy and Josh, it was just this sense of relief about being like, oh yes, okay, great, we're on the same page. We know what's happening, and we all want to do something about it, and there's action there, and there's Climate Spring is this really amazing institution because there is scrutiny there. I've pitched projects to Josh and Lucy, and they've said, actually, we don't think this is quite right. We think you need to find a new angle for this, because although there is a lack of this content out in the world, that doesn't mean we can get lazy and we can just go, yeah, whatever. Okay, you want to talk about polar bears and whatever? Yeah, great. Just get it commissioned, get it made, because we don't want to do that. We want to make stuff that's commercially viable, exciting, and can compete with other stories out in the world. We don't want this to feel like it's a charitable endeavour. And I think, I just feel so lucky to have met Lucy and Josh and Climate Spring in general, because it's just this amazing vessel for change in the industry.
Great, thank you. Lucy, maybe you want to share your experience, your point of view about it?
Yes, thank you, Jack. Mutual. Absolutely, as you said, it's that, as you said, respecting the artistic process is really important, and it is a fine line. And I think what we're interested in at Climate Spring, and this is a shared interest, I think, is not just creating content that is worthy or very obviously making people feel guilty or worried or anxiety. I think we've had enough of that, frankly. I don't think that's what we need anymore. I think it's the proliferation of understanding what would responding to climate change look like. There's no one answer to that, right? There's no one perfect film that is going to tell us the answer to all our problems. We need lots of interpretations of that, which looks different from different communities and different cultures and different country contexts. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of storytelling. You can invoke different worlds. So that's, at Climate Spring, what we've tried to focus on, working with writers and producers to find and support the stories that show the way through, and that means quite often it's not an obvious environmental film, and often we're not pitching them as environmental films. It's a thriller, it's a murder mystery, it's a love story. Incidentally, it's in the backdrop. The other thing I'd say is we're also obviously mindful it's a commercial industry. We want it to, if you want it to reach audiences, you have to have that lens applied. So that's always the balance at Climate Spring, of looking at both what commissioners are looking for, what the market is looking for, and then from a climate kind of messaging perspective, what will work. And there is a science. I mean, we are the only, few organisations on the nexus of climate, storytelling and screen, but there is a whole industry of experts on climate narrative change, on how to engage audiences in ways that work. And we're trying to connect those together because, that's where we are and that's the urgency. And then finally, I'll just say, I think it will be interesting to look back at this point in a few years and see it, as we had with kind of gender equality, the Bechdel test and, what is acceptable storytelling. And I think quite soon films that do not reference climate change or are kind of unwittingly doing the fossil fuel propaganda unintentionally are going to start to look tone deaf, I think, in a world in which people are themselves grappling with these questions and are aware that this is the world we're fast moving into. So I think, it will be interesting to see if this is the turning point today at Cannes.
I wanted to add two things.
Sure.
Sorry, because you asked me, are there any more projects? I think books has always been an inspiration, and lots of books are being adapted, but I can see that there is a lot more novels dealing with those subjects rather than films. So I think we do, as producers we read a lot, and I think maybe there is more freedom, I don't know why. Writers are more aware, I don't know, but I think this is something we can really look at in terms of inspiration to make films. And I'm surprised to see so many books dealing with those issues and so few films. So I think there is a gap in that. And when you told about the collective, I think that's really important that we know what's being done elsewhere, even in our own country, who is doing what, and this awareness has to be promoted. And I wanted to just say one word about this new collective raised by talents in France, and now it's become more international. It's called Cut, and it's really a way to have people being aware of what's being made around them, and just give them, the will to join the movement and to do something. And it doesn't have to be big things again. I think, as you're saying, it has to be based on what we are good at, which is build stories with characters and who can mean something to the new audiences. And I think it's so the collective thinking is very important. So anyway.
Thank you very much for sharing this. Do you actually? It's true that it's important saying that there's more and more films, movies, and any artistic project related with this topic. So, do you also think that for example, these books will push you to maybe adapt them in films then? And
yeah, that's what I think. I think cinema is very behind. I think it's a very conservative part of the arts. When you see artists, again, writers, or I think cinema and series, they really have to. They are behind, and they have to move faster now. Yeah. So.
Yes, Lucy, of course.
I know, just to say we are starting to do this, so we're starting to adapt some books to film, because you're absolutely right. There's a whole proliferation of it's its own genre now, isn't it? Cli-fi. It's called climate fiction. So yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I think we need to remind ourselves that we're an industry of adaptation and change. We are creative people. We respond to issues, problems, and we work around them. This is an amazing industry to work in, with just this incredible amount of creative and, just a high amount of ingenuity. I don't know quite how to phrase it, but we are capable of problem solving, and we can figure out workarounds and ways to kind of figure this stuff out. And I think we need to remind ourselves we shouldn't be so passive. I love the way you've phrased that we're just kind of sitting back a little bit at the moment. We're kind of watching lots of other mediums and art forms kind of plough on, but I think we need to really, get excited again, really kind of,
And we're talking about the stories, but the good news is the ways of distributing films are also changing, and those people who are hosting us know a lot about impact campaigns. And the good news is when you have those films, you can have actually more means to show them to the public, to attract associations that will want to make a special evening with debate. I mean, it's a tool also for diffusion, and I think it's very important to think on the writing of the stories, but also to think on the way you show the films to the public. And cinema is here for that, and you can't do that on a platform. I mean, you can, but not in the same way. So I really do believe also in the power of cinemas and public attendance.
Julie-Jeanne, you EFAD represents 37 film associations in Europe. Together, you discuss, you share many issues such as sustainability, gender, inclusion, and so on. Can you share with us some initiatives being developed in this direction by the EFAD or directly by one or several countries you represent?
Yes, with pleasure, and a big thank you, because it's so good to start Cannes with such, priorities and important topics. Indeed, we are a group of 37 film and audiovisual centers, and it's not new that they wanted to do something. I mean, it's both environmental impact and also social, gender, and inclusion. So what we did actually is try to set up working groups. It was very high on the agenda, and actually everybody was trying to find ideas, solutions. My member, what they do is basically giving money to projects. They are supporting with public money, distribution, production, writing. What they don't do is telling you how you should tell a story, what story you should tell, but they are trying to be agent for change. They are trying, with this money, to play a little role so that, yes, you can produce in better conditions, cinemas can move towards more ecological practices, so they all had the feeling that they feel accountable, a huge responsibility with this public money. And it was like 5-6 years ago, they started to really brainstorm. And with our group, we do exchange of best practices. So basically, we were asking each other, have you started to do something? Is it working? Where do we start? And it was to stimulate first the debate. It was at national level, but it was also at European level. I am sure you know that the media program is now imposing all the projects a page where you have to develop your sustainability strategy, your diversity strategy. So it's more words, it's a declaration of intention, but it's a way to start asking yourself questions. Is my project sustainable, inclusive? And you have no obligation, and we are at the stage where everything is still, let's say, at the incentive stage and not so much too strong on mandatory initiatives.